the new numbers didn't play out. They really did not play out. So, you know, but, you know, you either have Drew Brees or you have Russell Wilson. Boy, those are bad choices to throw you the football, isn't it? Go figure. So, I don't know.
So it could be an ideal, you know, I believe Seattle could be an ideal situation for him, but I feel like New Orleans would have been better for him. Simply because I do believe in New Orleans, he would have saw the ball more. You know what I mean? You have to think about this. Tyler Lockett, he's a pretty dynamic wide receiver, and he's more than likely going to the Pro Bowl this year.
Right.
About DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson's done a great job of helping that young man adjust to the NFL.
Right. Well, that's true. I mean, you got a lot of good players out there, that's for sure. You know, we still, let's not kid ourselves, Xavier. We still have another 8-9 weeks of football to go, don't we?
Yes. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens, and I'm very much looking forward to next Monday Night Football's matchup, and we will be discussing it a little. It will be the Seattle Seahawks traveling to San Francisco to take on the Niners, a renewal of a rivalry that really took place in this decade in particular, when both teams were around the top of the NFC. You know, it was just a few years in there, maybe 2 at the most, 3, but it was entertaining, must-see TV when those two teams would go up against each other. And let's not forget that infamous NFC Championship game that the Seattle Seahawks won, that basically was our Super Bowl, because we saw what they went on to do to Peyton Manning and that record-setting Denver Broncos offense.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And to think, once upon a time, the Seattle Seahawks were in the AFC and the Oakland Raiders of their rivalry. Then they switched conferences, and now they have the other Bay Area rivalry with the 49ers. Go figure, right? Of course, now they won't. The Raiders are headed to Las Vegas. How the franchises turns, huh, Xavier?
That's very true. I mean, that's very true.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add to this night's edition of the Real Rare? One thing I love about you, man, you go out there and you bring it loaded, and we are able to cover a lot of ground every time we do this program, and that's what really makes it really good stuff. So, good stuff. Anything you want to add before we close out the program?
I'm going to be very intrigued as we go into the second half of this NFL season. We're getting closer to the stretch of Thanksgiving now, and that's where you really start to separate your contenders from your pretenders.
Right.
But, Scott, I will say this on a final note, and I wasn't going to bring this team up, but something happened today that, you know, it just befuddles my mind.
What's that?
Dan Quinn made a decision today in Atlanta to reassign some of his coaches to different positions. And you're 1-7. Even if you were to win out, which they will not, but even if you were to win out, you'd be 9-7. That's not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. Why are you making these decisions now?
Yeah, that's mind-boggling, let alone save his job, so I don't know. Desperation does a lot of things, huh, Xavier? You think?
It definitely does, and, you know, them losing a good locker room guy like a Mohamed Sanu, I believe that's going to have a slight effect there as well. It's not going to surprise me if we end up in a situation in Atlanta where they actually end up having to tear it down and build it back up.
Well, okay, one thing that I want to mention now that you brought it up before we close the show. I think I had mentioned this before about the, everybody talks about the Dolphins tanking and that they were probably a lock to get Tua. Now the dynamic possibility of Tua going to Cincinnati could be a very real one. Some thoughts about that. I saw how bad the Jets were against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but meanwhile the Jets look worse down here in South Florida. Now you have two teams that are 1-7. So, some thoughts about that.
And the thing is, Scott, I don't even believe that's the last game the Miami Dolphins are going to win this year.
Yeah,
so the Tua sweepstakes may indeed be over. This may be all in now on Justin Herbert. And I'm going to throw another name at you that I believe they could look at as well that would be interesting, and that would be Jacob Eason at Washington.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, if the Dolphins hadn't played Josh Rosen even a lot more this year, and they're still going with Ryan Fitzpatrick, everybody seems to think they're going to tank, but they're not tanking. They're playing hard. Give them that.
Yes, they came a long way from where they sat within the first 3 weeks of the season. And they're doing this with a lot of no-name players. You know, Preston Williams. Scott, I'm gonna tell you this story before we go off the air, because I don't believe I've told you this story before.
Okay.
Preston Williams, the season came to an end yesterday with a knee injury. But I heard many different hosts saying today, you know, Preston Williams, you know, this guy came out of nowhere, and he's going to be a great dynamic talent for the Miami Dolphins. And Scott, for me, Preston Williams did not come out of nowhere. Scott, I first saw Preston Williams play in October 2013 when he was at Lovejoy High School, and he was taking on my high school's Newton Rams. I was a young intern for the Covington News, sitting in the press box, watching a guy who, at the time, I looked at the other journalists around me and I said, you know, we might be looking at the next Calvin Johnson. So for me, Preston Williams did not come out of nowhere. I've been waiting for him to emerge on the scene the way that he has. He originally committed to go to Tennessee. He played at Tennessee. He ended up getting injured, ended up having to go to Colorado State, revitalize himself a little. He didn't have a huge college career, but I'm glad to see him having the success that he's having now in the pros, and wishing him a very speedy recovery. Hopes he comes back better than ever, because I believe he and Devontae Parker really could be a dominant duo at wide receiver for the Dolphins for the next few years. I'm just really proud to see some of the things I saw this year from Preston, because the things I saw this year are the same things I saw in 2013.
Well, I mean,
it's special.
Being on bad teams do facilitate opportunities. So, you know, you're still trying to find your core, but let's not kid ourselves. Well, the next couple of years of Miami Dolphins right now are collecting draft choices, and I'm sure they'll get it figured out sooner or later. I mean, you know, obviously, I'm sure they were glad to get that first win, but I feel feeling there might be another win or so before the year is over with. So, meanwhile, the only winless team that you have right now is that other Ohio team called the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you know,
I do believe, and Scott, I will say this, and that's not to cut you off, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay.
Because I do believe we are in a situation where even with A.J. Green coming back, I don't believe that fixes that at all. And it will not surprise me if we watch the Cincinnati Bengals go 0-16.
Oh, it wouldn't either.
I don't see a win in sight for them. I don't.
Well, not only that, if indeed it does happen, I would love to see A.J. Dalton go ahead and get traded someplace else. Was it A.J.
Yes.
Dalton? Help me out with the Dalton first name. But Andy Dalton, I'm sorry. Andy Dalton lands someplace else where he's in a much better situation. I think Andy Dalton has some good football ahead of him. I really do.
And not only them, Scott, but what about some of those defensive anchors that were there on those playoff teams as well? Like Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins. Those guys, they deserve better too.
Oh yeah.
I just want to see that entire situation just started all the way over. You know, you had your chances there when Marvin Lewis was there, but it ended up not happening.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. There's no doubt about it. And the way I look at it is there are a lot of teams that will be evaluating themselves about who's going to stick around, who isn't going to stay around. But there's a lot of decent quarterbacks that could be changing area codes for sure. I mean, is Jameis Winston the long-term solution with Tampa Bay? I don't know. Marcus Mariota is probably definitely heading out of Tennessee. And, of course, there'll be a lot of other things that play out as well. But, you know what we did see over this past weekend was a guy by the name of Kyler Murray can make a defense like San Francisco look bad is what they did. And he's an exceptionally young kid. And, you have some good young quarterbacks out there that are exciting to watch. And as the season goes on, as long as these athletic quarterbacks can stay out of trouble and they learn how to slide, then it'll be good to see them in the lineup. So, we have a lot of football left to go. So, meanwhile, this concludes the Monday night edition of the Real and the Rare. My name is Scott Morgan, the Motor City Madmouth, along with the X-Man Xavier McKnight. Any closing thoughts before we call it a night?
No, we're looking forward to next week with the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers and any other intriguing NFL headlines that come up along the way.
But meanwhile, we have another.
Thanks for joining us tonight, everyone.
Yeah, meanwhile, we'll have another edition of the Real and the Rare on Wednesday night. We'll have a subject not related to sports that we hope that you can tune in. So, meanwhile, this is Scott Morganroth here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, along with
Xavier McKnight.
And for all you folks that want to listen, go ahead and see the South Florida Tribune. We have some good stories out there, www.southfloridatribune.com. So, once again, folks, Xavier and I will be back on the Sports Exchange tomorrow night. That'll begin at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and we'll summarize all the events that are going on in the day of sports. So, meanwhile, everybody, good night. We will see you Wednesday night for another edition of the Real and the Rare on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Good night, Xavier.
Good night, everyone.